Chapter 12:24. Even though the pain was indescribable, Yu Yuan did not resist at all. Perhaps he knew that resistance was useless. The fiendish aura corroded his bones. His face twisted, and his flesh and bones quickly melted. His entire body became a bloody paste. Not long after the screams disappeared, Yu Yuan was completely refined, turning into a large red ball of blood. Demon Lord 3 Knight held the flashing red ball of blood in one hand. His entire body trembled uncontrollably, and tears seeped out of his eyes. No one had ever seen this influential figure of the three realms cry. He suddenly raised the blood ball in his hand with one hand, and the scarlet cloak behind him immediately fluttered violently, as if it was about to flap its wings and fly away. The blood ball instantly divided into 72 balls of red light, shooting in all directions and drilling into the mouths of the 72 beast heads. The 72 fanged mouths suddenly swallowed and spat out blood-red light, as if they had come to life. In the distance, a large group of figures rapidly flew through the air. They were all demonic elites that had been ordered to retreat. Demon Lord 3 Knight, who was surrounded by the 72 beast statues, attracted everyone's attention, but they only took a quick glance before flying away. The army led by Wu Feng did not pursue. The majestic demon palace under the blood clouds could already be faintly seen. They did not have the courage to face Demon Lord 3 Knight head-on. Otherwise, with a group of god-level experts working together, they would have long since broken through the defenses of the demonic elites. Countless gazes in the army of the three realms looked nervously at the demon palace in the distance. That demon palace was like a stabilizing force, making everyone feel an inexplicable pressure. They had just been fighting to the death, but now that the demonic elites had retreated, everything became silent. No one dared to act rashly. Yu Qianqiu floated in the air with his arms crossed, narrowing his eyes as he stared at the majestic demon palace on the peak of a distant mountain. Wu Feng flew over from above the army and stopped in front of him. He bowed and said, "Torture envoy. The demonic army retreated very strangely just now, and Demon Lord 3 Knight's lair is right in front of us. We are truly not a match for Demon Lord 3 Knight. I'm afraid the torture envoy will have to personally deal with him." He had to force himself to say these words. As soon as he finished speaking, he felt a majestic aura pressing down on him from behind. Turning around, he saw a roiling demonic chi soaring into the sky from the Devil Palace, stirring up the blood-red clouds in the sky and surging over like a tidal wave. Suddenly, another ray of green light soared into the sky, instantly igniting the devilish clouds that filled the sky. Wang, the strange, oily green fire clouds roiled endlessly in the sky, dyeing the world green. An uproar came from the army below. Many of them had seen Demon Monarch 3 Knight's demonic flames before. At this moment, the 3 Knights' demon lord's voice reverberated through the world, "Yu Qianqiu. This monarch has been waiting for a long time." As soon as he finished speaking, the large balls of demonic flames in the sky immediately fell, and the densely packed army of the three realms immediately fell into chaos. Not long after, screams rang out everywhere, and those who could escape were all running for their lives. Wu Feng was greatly alarmed. As he dodged the falling demon flames, he waved the wind god staff in his hand and shouted sternly, "Steady. Hold on." However, at this time, all orders were false. Everyone placed escaping as their top priority, and even Wu Feng could not suppress the chaos. The remaining 22 deities from the Netherworld God Office saw the chaos and hurried over to ask what they should do. Wang Qing protected Madame Blackpool and Wu Xiong as they retreated. They all felt that at this point, it was safest to stay close to Yu Qianqiu. The large balls of green flames whooshed past Yu Qianqiu. Although he floated in the air without moving, the demonic flames automatically avoided him. Yu Qianqiu expressionlessly looked at the retreating crowd, then waved his hand in the direction of the demon palace and said indifferently, "Go." The people who had gathered looked at each other, not knowing what he meant. Wu Feng carefully asked, disciplinary envoy, what do you mean? You don't understand. Yu Qianqiu said indifferently. I want you all to work together to kill Demon Monarch 3 Knights. Everyone's expression changed. They knew that even if they worked together, they would not be a match for Demon Monarch 3 Knights. What was the difference between sending them to their deaths? Wu Feng looked around and laughed dryly. With our abilities, we are not a match for Old Thief 3 Knights. Fortunately, we have the disciplinary envoy. Yu Qianqiu did not let him finish and interrupted him. With me here, you all have a chance to survive against 3 knights. If you don't kill 3 knights, I will kill you all. I guarantee that none of you will escape. As soon as he said this, the people around him felt like they had been struck by lightning. They were all speechless. If they had known this would happen, they would have continued to fight the Demon Dao army. Madame Blackpool's face was filled with fear, and Wu Xiong's face was red. If he did not know that he was not a match for Yu Qianqiu, he would have fought him to the death. Wang Qing, who had always listened to his father's orders, slowly raised the 6-dragon snow blue sword and pointed it at Yu Qianqiu. He spoke for the first time. The voice under the silver mask sounded. Yu Qianqiu. What do you mean by doing this? His voice was filled with uncontrollable anger. Nothing. Yu Qianqiu glanced at him and said, however, if you don't put down your sword, don't blame me for being impolite. You want to burn the bridge after crossing the river. Wang Qing was truly angry, but he was pulled back by Wu Feng. Wu Feng squeezed out a smile at Yu Qianqiu. Disciplinary envoy. If you don't act, we really are not a match for Demon Monarch 3 Knights. With our cultivation, going up is no different from sending us to our deaths. Who said I won't act? Yu Qianqiu glanced at him and turned into a stream of light, flying toward the demon palace. Everyone looked at each other. After a short discussion, they didn't have the guts to run away. They could only bite the bullet and follow. None of them looked good. As soon as he flew above the demon palace, Yu Qianqiu's pupils shrank. The strange scene of the 72 beast statues glowing with black light and spitting out red light aroused his vigilance. Furthermore, Demon Monarch 3 Knights was standing fearlessly in the center of the square, waiting for him. He didn't dare to act rashly. His gaze constantly swept around, trying to see if there were any clues. It was best if he didn't fall for the other's trick. Demon Monarch 3 Knights saw that the demonic flames from the sky had no effect on Yu Qianqiu. Since the army of the 3 realms had already scattered in fear, he couldn't be bothered to waste his energy. With a wave of his hand, the green demonic flames that filled the sky immediately disappeared. Even the blood clouds that filled the sky quickly disappeared. The sky above the demon palace was unexpectedly clear for thousands of miles. At this time, Wu Feng and the others had also arrived. However, they all stood behind Yu Qianqiu, prepared to escape at any time. No one was willing to fight against Demon Monarch 3 Knights. Demon Monarch 3 Knights. Today is the day of your death. Yu Qianqiu suddenly laughed coldly. A golden light flashed in the air, and the skyscraping arrow circled around his body. At the same time, he was secretly observing his surroundings. This situation made him feel that something was wrong. Is that so? I want to see whose death it will be. Demon Monarch 3 Knights snorted and suddenly raised his arms to the sky. A majestic aura suddenly exploded from the mountain peak, causing the entire mountain peak to violently tremble. The 72 beast eagles roared in unison as they spat out a beam of interweaving black and red light. The 72 beams of light quickly formed a pentagonal pattern in the center of the plaza, drowning Demon King 3 Knights in it. With such a strange scene, let alone Wu Feng and the others, even Yu Qianqiu felt that something was wrong. Yu Qianqiu no longer hesitated. He didn't care whether there was a conspiracy or not. He would fight first and then think later. The skyscraping arrow rumbled, carrying the power of wind and lightning as it shot towards Demon Monarch 3 Knights in the center of the square. Bang! A pentagonal pillar of light shot into the sky, directly knocking away the skyscraping arrow. The powerful impact was unbelievably strong, causing the surrounding air to violently vibrate. Even Yu Qianqiu's figure swayed in the air, while the others were also sent staggering by the powerful air currents. Yu Qianqiu recalled the divine arrow and looked up in shock. He saw that the other end of the pillar of light had already pierced through the sky, shooting towards an unknown location. By the time the others stabilized themselves, they had already been sent 1,000 meters away. Their clothes were in a mess, but they were glad that they hadn't been directly hit by the pillar of light. Otherwise, even if they didn't die, they wouldn't be any better off. The pillar of light remained in the sky for a long time without dissipating. No one knew what Demon Monarch 3 Knights was doing. Yu Qianqiu was about to attack again when he suddenly saw the pillar of light disappear. Demon Monarch 3 Knights revealed an extremely excited expression as he stared at the sky and knelt down on one knee, his expression incomparably pious. An ancient and terrifying aura instantly descended like the might of heaven, filling the sky and earth. Yu Qianqiu felt that something was wrong. He suddenly looked up and discovered that it was just as he had expected. A pair of dreamy and illusory demonic eyes had appeared in the 9 heavens, coldly and emotionlessly looking down on all living beings. This wasn't the first time he had seen this pair of demon eyes, so he couldn't be more familiar with them. Suddenly, a crack appeared between the eyebrows of the 2 eyes. Dense lightning flashed within, but there was no sound of thunder or lightning. A blurry figure slowly floated out of the lightning, as if stepping on lightning to walk out of the void. That aura was extremely shocking. The lightning disappeared, and the crack in space instantly healed. The figure quietly floated between the eyebrows of the giant demon eyes. F***ck. It can't be that demon god knight directly descended from the god realm to the demon realm, right? Yu Qianqiu glanced at the kneeling Demon Monarch 3 Knights, then raised his head to look at the sky. The muscles on his face fiercely twitched. In the blink of an eye, the silhouette descended upon the demon palace at the speed of light. The silhouette was illusory like a dream, and it was impossible to see the true appearance of the newcomer. However, he could vaguely sense that the newcomer was wrapped in a large black waistcoat. At first, Yu Qianqiu thought that it was because he was too far away, but now he realized that it was indeed a figure. It didn't seem like a real person. Looking at the sky again, the pair of giant demon eyes was still there. Yu Qianqiu could clearly feel that the pair of eyes was staring at him, but then it silently disappeared into the void. Chapter 1225. Just like that, Yu Qianqiu guessed that the illusory figure in front of him was not the demon god himself, and immediately felt much more at ease. However, what was certain was that this illusory figure that had descended from the sky was definitely related to the demon god. 1,000 meters away, Wu Feng and the others all revealed expressions of shock and uncertainty, not knowing what was going on. At this moment, the illusory figure suddenly shot towards the kneeling Demon King 3 Knights. The pious Demon King 3 Knights' body trembled, as if he had instantly fused with the illusory figure. He suddenly raised his head, and as if he had lost gravity, he slowly floated up with his eyes tightly closed, spreading out his arms as he slowly rose up. A boundless and terrifying aura began to radiate from his body, sweeping through the heavens and earth. In an instant, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky, creating a thunderstorm out of nowhere, causing all living beings on the vast earth to feel an immense pressure. The heavens and earth seemed to be cheering for the Demon King 3 Knights. Yu Qianqiu knew that things were not good. The demon god had probably given the Demon King 3 Knights something to rely on. Suddenly, a ruthless expression flashed across his face, and he decided to stop here. The divine arrow in his hand shot out with a boom, intending to kill the Demon King 3 Knights in one blow. Although the Demon Lord of 3 Knights had his eyes closed and his back was facing him, at the crucial moment, he decisively turned his hand and grabbed. 5 swirling black lights emanated from his 5 fingers and managed to restrain the sharp arrowhead, firmly holding it in place and preventing it from moving. Yu Qianqiu immediately sensed the opponent's mountainous cultivation through the divine arrow, and couldn't help but be shocked. He had fought with the Demon King 3 nights before, and knew that it was impossible for the Demon King 3 nights to have such a high cultivation. The only possibility was that he had something to do with the demon god. Seeing that the divine arrow had actually been controlled by the opponent, Yu Qianqiu was about to fight for it when the Demon King 3 nights suddenly turned around and opened his eyes. His terrifying red eyes flashed with an incomparably demonic red light, instantly stunning everyone's mind. Yu Qianqiu felt his vision blur, and all he could see was a boundless sea of blood. Suddenly, countless flowers of blood blossomed on the surface of the sea, and countless blood vines shot out of the sea of blood, binding him tightly and making him unable to move. This scene instantly made him think of the scene when he had been trapped by Yan Zhuixing's demonic eye. It was exactly the same as now, but the power was not on the same level. He was not the only one. Even Wu Feng's family, as well as the 20 god-level experts of the Netherworld Divine Manor, fell into a daze the moment the 3 knights' demon eyes opened. In other words, the opponent had not even made a move. With just a glance, he had subdued everyone. Was Yan Zhuixing. But this, the demon Tian was that it had not yet, the god Tian, and Yu, Yan Xing Qiant. Yan heaven, Tian, that the Wen Yan Tian, Yan Qin, of the god, wherever the golden light shone, the blood sea was annihilated. Countless blood vines that were binding Yu Qianqiu crumbled and disappeared. Yu Qianqiu, who was floating in the air, shook his head. His eyes regained their clarity and he shouted, "Break!" Bang! The divine arrow exploded into thousands of rays of golden light. The black light that had broken through the seal scattered in all directions and circled around him. At the same time, Yu Qianqiu released a ball of samadhi true fire to protect his body. He pointed at the opponent and said sternly, "You are not San Yi." Demon Monarch 3 Knights put down his hand, and the demonic red light in his eyes disappeared. His aura of looking down on the world was completely revealed, far surpassing the aura of conquering the world from 3 Knights. It was as if he was the master of this world. San Yi looked at him coldly and said, "So the star bead has such a use. Does the samadhi true fire also come from the star bead?" Although the voice was still San Yi's, the tone was completely different. Yu Qianqiu quickly looked behind him. From the expressions of Wu Feng and the others, he could see that they had been controlled by the demon eye. His eyes narrowed as he turned back and shouted, "You are demon god Yi. To be able to make me take action time and again, you can be considered a capable person. I can give you a chance." Demon Monarch 3 Knights said indifferently, "Submit to my demonic path and I can spare your life." These words were undoubtedly admitting his identity. Facing such a terrifying person like the demon god who was threatening him, it would be a lie if Yu Qianqiu said he was not afraid. His expression twitched as he gritted his teeth and said, "You are the #1 expert in the god realm. You actually went against the rules of the god realm and came to the lower realm. Aren't you afraid of being punished by the Tao?" He was forcing himself to use the Tao to threaten the other party. Punishment. If there was someone who dared to punish me, he would have done so long ago. There would be no need to wait until today. Demon Monarch 3 Knights' tone revealed a trace of disdain as he said, "The so-called rules, if the person who made them cannot abide by them, how can others abide by them? That dragon that is running around in the lower realm, doesn't it come from the god realm?" The dragon that the other party was referring to, Yu Qianqiu naturally understood that it was Hong Tai Long. But what made Yu Qianqiu feel strange was that with the demon god's abilities, it shouldn't be difficult for him to subdue him. Why did he waste his breath to persuade him to surrender? It didn't make sense. His instincts told him that there must be some inside story that he did not know about. He calmed down in a second. It was good that the other party was not in a hurry to kill him. Otherwise, he would have nowhere to run. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Demon God. You are the dignified #1 expert in the God realm, but you came all the way from the God realm to attack a small figure like me. Isn't that beneath your status?" Demon Monarch 3 Knights said without any emotions, "You think too highly of yourself. If I wanted to kill you, it would be as easy as snapping a finger. I don't even need to use my main body to come to the lower realm. This is just a clone of my main body. I can create millions of clones like this at any time. As long as you are willing to surrender to me, you will enjoy endless benefits." Yu Qianqiu was secretly shocked. He didn't expect that a clone of the other party would be so much stronger than his cultivation of a late great god. The power of the main body could be imagined. But how could the famous demon god be so patient? Why did the other party insist on him surrendering to him? There should be many experts in the god realm that were stronger than him. There must be something fishy going on here. Could it be that he was bluffing? In reality, this clone could only scare people. Yu Qianqiu's eyes turned, and he suddenly shouted, F***CKU. 10,000 divine swords poured down like a torrential rain, shooting toward Devil Monarch 3 Knights. Demon Monarch 3 Knights' gaze suddenly became cold. He didn't expect the other party to know his identity and still dare to take the initiative to attack. The other party's guts were boundless. He teleported and disappeared on the spot. Before Yu Qianqiu could react, his vision blurred. He felt an intense pain in his abdomen. His body felt like it was about to explode. His eyeballs almost popped out. The true samadhi fire protecting his body dissipated. He couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. He didn't even see how the other party attacked. He fell to the ground like a meteor. With a boom, he smashed a deep pit in the ground. Smoke and dust filled the air. Only then did Demon Monarch 3 Knights' figure appear in the air. It was easy to imagine how fast he was. With a backhand slap behind him, the 10,000 divine swords that had just been shot out were immediately thrown into a mess and stabbed into the square outside the demon palace. At this moment, he stared coldly at the person struggling in the deep pit. If he didn't have any misgivings, he would have crushed Yu Qianqiu into dust. Even so, Yu Qianqiu's injuries weren't light. He struggled in the deep pit for a long time but couldn't get up. He spat out mouthfuls of blood, giving people the feeling that he was not far from death. "You have guts. You actually dare to attack me." Demon Monarch 3 Knights looked down and said coldly, "Submit to me and I'll spare your life." Damn it. Misjudgment. Yu Qianqiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He spat out another mouthful of blood. Finally, he could breathe normally again. The moment he opened his mouth, he cursed, "I'll submit to your mother." As he cursed, he disappeared. Of course, he knew the principle of running if he couldn't win. Demon King 3 Knights narrowed his eyes. He was not at all surprised by this. He turned back to look at the 10,000 swords stabbed into the ground. He stretched out 2 fingers and pressed them against his forehead. Suddenly, black light shone from his body, and all the light gathered at his forehead. A blood-red cloud pattern floated between his eyebrows. At this moment, Demon Monarch 3 Knights' body trembled. He looked at his hands and touched the blood-red cloud pattern on his forehead. His face was filled with surprise. He was the real Demon Monarch 3 Knights now. Just now, he was protected by the demon god's clone. Although he knew what had happened, he couldn't control his body. He originally thought that after the crisis was resolved, the demon god's avatar would leave, but what he didn't expect was that the demon god actually sealed this avatar in his body so that he could use it at any time at a critical moment. How could he not be happy? Demon Monarch 3 Knights looked around. When he saw the 20 people being controlled, he couldn't help but laugh wildly. Then, he charged over and extracted their natal primordial spirits to control them. In Utopia's misty palace, a bloody figure appeared in the sky and fell to the ground like a dead pig. Yu Qianqiu struggled a few times but couldn't get up. His body felt like it was falling apart. He could only lie on the ground and weakly shout, "Someone, save me." However, it seemed like only he could hear his voice. Coincidentally, Hong Tailong was bored out of his mind and came out for a stroll with his hands behind his back. When he saw a bloody person on the ground, he walked over and shook his head as he muttered, "Who is so unlucky to be bullied by that brat to this extent and even be captured?" When he got closer, he raised his leg and kicked the person, saying, "He's not dead, right? Hong Tailong. I'm kicking your ancestor. It's me." Yu Qianqiu cursed as he lay on the ground. Hong Tailong's ears pricked up. Suddenly, he exclaimed and reacted. He immediately squatted down and flipped the person over. When he saw that it really was Yu Qianqiu, he exclaimed in shock, "Yu Qianqiu. Who injured you like this?" Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and said, "Be gentler. It hurts." Chapter 12:26. With Hong Tailong's loud roar, a large group of people immediately rushed out of the palace. When they saw that he was injured to such a state, they were all shocked. His harem beauties even burst into tears. Everyone hurriedly carried him in. After placing him on the bed, 7 or 8 hands touched him, all checking his injuries. Yu Qianqiu lay there weakly and smiled bitterly, "I'm fine. These are just minor injuries. I can still endure." He spoke casually, but the faces of the 7 or 8 people who checked his injuries instantly turned pale. They discovered that his internal organs were all severely injured. It could be said that his liver and intestines were all broken. His tendons, meridians, and bones were all broken. These people were frightened badly. They couldn't imagine how he hadn't died yet, that he was still alive. "How are his injuries?" Furong asked anxiously. On the bed, Yu Qianqiu was surrounded by people. She could not squeeze in. Hong Tailong looked around with a grave expression and said, "Change the bloody clothes on him first. We will discuss how to treat him." Immediately, a few hands tried to remove Yu Qianqiu's clothes. Yu Qianqiu widened his eyes and shouted with all his might, "Don't." Everyone looked at him in confusion. Yu Qianqiu panted slightly. He felt the golden pearl in his dantian continuously sending essence qi to his limbs and bones. The pain all over his body was alleviated, and his body was gradually recovering. He knew that with this life-saving treasure, he would not die. He let out a breath and said, "This outfit is pretty good. I still need to wear this to find my master. I'm afraid I won't be able to invite him if I'm all clean. It's better to be pitiful." Everyone was speechless. He was already injured to this extent, yet he was still thinking of crooked ideas. Beauty of 100 Charms, who was hugging his head, said anxiously, "Then let's treat your injuries first." "I'm fine." Yu Qianqiu's voice regained some vigor. He said, "I know my own body best. No matter how serious my injuries are, I'm not afraid. I guarantee that in less than a month, I will still be alive and kicking. Don't look at me like that. I'm not joking. Do you think I'm not afraid of death?" Hearing how confident he sounded, everyone was skeptical. Hong Tailong asked with a grave expression once again, "Who beat you up to this state?" Yu Qianqiu was furious when he heard that. He rolled his eyes and said, "Who else could it be? Apart from my master, no one in the 3 realms is a match for me. That bastard god-fiend didn't abide by the rules. He, the #1 expert of the divine world, actually dared to go against this daddy. Bastard! My heaven and earth splitting arrow was also stolen by him. Demon god! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. For some of them, this was the first time they knew that emotion was actually the #1 expert in the immortal realm. Hong Tai Long nodded and said, "For you to be able to escape with your life from the fiend god's hands, it's also considered good fortune. But, even if we can invite your master probably isn't the fiend god's match either. It shouldn't be a problem." An ugly smile appeared on Yu Qianzhou's bloodied face as he said, "It's not the fiend god himself, but a wisp of the fiend god's avatar that descended to the lower realm. I reckon that old fellow can deal with it. You guys don't have to worry about me. I'll rest for a day, and after I recover my strength, I'll go to the barrier of the heavens to look for the old fellow." Although he said that, the group of people still refused to leave. From time to time, they would check on his injuries. When they realized that he was really recovering at a rapid pace, they were both surprised and relieved. The next day, when Yu Qianzhou woke up in a daze, he could already move his limbs, but he still couldn't get off the bed. However, he couldn't wait to take revenge. Actually, there was a reason. He was afraid that his injuries would recover too quickly, and he wouldn't be able to fool Bai Changchun to help him snatch back the divine arrow. Therefore, Shen Yu, who was in charge of transportation, was called over again. Hong Tai Long had to work a little harder as he carried Yu Qianzhou on his back. After greeting everyone, the three of them disappeared from Ethereal Palace. Once they reached the Netherworld River, Shen Yu knew what to do without any instructions. He obediently jumped into the Netherworld River and revealed his original form. He opened his huge clamshell, carried the two of them, and rapidly swam against the current. Once they stepped into the barrier of the heavens, Hong Tai Long carried Yu Qianzhou and jumped ashore. Then, Shen Yu was sent back to Utopia. Under Yu Qianzhou's signal, Hong Tai Long immediately carried him and flew back to the old place. Under the huge moon, Hong Tai Long carried Yu Qianzhou on his back as he stood in front of the Hengduan mountain cliff in a daze. In the barrier of the heavens ahead, Bai Changchun, who was dressed in a green robe, was still floating there. However, there were 7 identical Bai Changchun standing there with their eyes closed. In the silence, there were many golden arcs of light going in and out of the 7 bodies, adding a sense of mystery to the pitch-black barrier of the heavens. 3 incarnations are early-stage ancient gods, 6 incarnations are mid-stage ancient gods. Doesn't that mean that 7 incarnations have already stepped into the doorstep of late-stage ancient gods, and 2 more incarnations will reach the peak of late-stage ancient gods? Once all 10 incarnations are gathered, he will reach the great perfection realm. Hong Tai Long had a look of disbelief on his face as he muttered to himself, "Is this for real? At this rate, the gods of the divine world have all lived in vain. This is way too fast." Yu Qianzhou was lying on Hong Tai Long's back, but his eyes were filled with little stars. He chuckled and said, "It's good that it's fast, it's good that it's fast. When the time comes, the old man will have no opponents and will definitely look for Mo Shin to fight one-on-one. Then, we can send the old man to the divine world from the Netherworld Divine Palace. If the old man kills Mo Shin, hee, then I will be living a happy life." Unimaginable. Hong Tai Long shook his head. Then, as if he suddenly thought of something, he asked, "When is your master coming out? Don't tell me we have to keep waiting here." Yu Qianzhou looked around and asked curiously, "Where are the 3 fellows guarding this place?" Hong Tai Long said angrily, "You're asking me, but who should I ask? Put me down. Just let me lie on the ground." Yu Qianzhou patted his shoulder, and Hong Tai Long obeyed and placed him on the ground. Yu Qianzhou then casually pulled out a blanket and even took 2 backrests and threw them on the ground. He said, "Help me lay them down." The corner of Hong Tai Long's mouth twitched. "Are you really planning to wait here for a long time?" Although he said that, he still helped him make the bed and placed him on the blanket. Yu Qianzhou adjusted his posture and leaned comfortably on the back of the blanket. He looked at the huge moon in the sky and then at the surroundings. He frowned and said, "It's just that the environment is a little bad, but I'll make do with it." He turned back and said, "Use your identity as the Dragon Clan's envoy to find out some information. I'll wait here for my master to come out. Don't worry about my safety. Although I can't make a move now, I can still hide in Utopia at any time. Damn you, I'm worried about my safety. We've done so many wicked things here, and you've been hiding in the dark. I've always been the one showing up in the open. If the matter of the tomb being robbed is exposed, I'll be the first person they suspect. Of course, you don't have to be afraid." Hong Tai Long snorted and turned into a stream of light. Yu Qianqiu was startled. However, he reckoned that Hong Tai Long wouldn't be in any danger with his identity as the Dragon Clan's envoy. He then turned over and lay on his side. He looked at Bai Chongqun and the barrier of heavens. After a long time, he actually felt drowsy. More than 10 days later, Hong Tai Long hurriedly returned. Yu Qianqiu, who was asleep, sat up abruptly when he heard the commotion. He shouted, "Who is it?" With his current cultivation, he could be considered an expert in the mausoleum of the god of sin. Someone like Hong Tai Long couldn't escape his ears at all. "It's me," Hong Tai Long greeted. Suddenly, he was startled. He sized him up and said, "You moved so quickly. How did your injuries heal so quickly? Don't mention it." Yu Qianqiu heaved a sigh of relief. He looked at Bai Chongqun and the barrier of heavens and waved his hand helplessly. "The old man hasn't come out yet. If I wait any longer, I'm afraid I won't be able to get the old man to help when my injuries are fully healed." Hong Tai Long laughed heartily. This was the first time he saw someone complaining about his injuries recovering too quickly. He then sat cross-legged on the mattress. He tilted his head and looked at the person in the barrier of heavens. He clicked his tongue and said, "Your master is amazing. It turns out that before we came, he had already come out once and did something big." "What do you mean?" Yu Qianqiu became spirited. He moved his butt closer to Hong Tai Long. "Do you still remember the wind god I told you about last time?" Hong Tai Long shook his head and exclaimed, "The left and right envoys guarding the wind god's tomb are Tian Feng and Di Feng. I asked a few people to verify and found out that these two people's cultivation had reached the intermediate ancient god realm. In the end, when your master came out, he didn't look for anyone but went straight for them. Two intermediate ancient god realm experts working together. In the end, they were killed by your master. Too awesome. Those two fellas are the top experts in the mausoleum of the god of sin. Now, no one in the entire mausoleum of the god of sin is a match for your master." Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. He tilted his head and looked at the barrier of heavens. In other words, the old man's cultivation has really reached the ancient god realm. Of course. "Hey!" Hong Tai Long elbowed him and snickered, "Are you interested in going to the wind god's tomb? I've already found out the location. If we refine the wind god's cultivation into a profound weapon, it shouldn't be a problem to deal with the demonic god's clone." Obviously, this guy had done his preparation work in advance. Yu Qianqiu nodded excitedly at first, but then said hesitantly, "That bastard demonic god doesn't follow the rules. Even if we refine the wind god's cultivation into a profound weapon and bring it there, if we win against the demonic god's clone, we will immediately attract the demonic god's revenge. At that time, we won't be able to handle it." Hong Tai Long felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured on him. He asked, "Then what should we do?" "Let's wait a little longer. If we can bring my master along, our chances of winning will be higher." Yu Qianqiu sighed as he looked at the 7 by Chongqun in the distance. Hong Tai Long thought about it and agreed. Thus, the two of them laid down on one side of the blanket and waited. In the end, they waited for more than a month. Most of the time, they were looking at the big moon in the sky or taking turns to sleep. In the end, Yu Qianqiu realized that his injuries had healed. It was impossible for him to wait for the Bai Changchun to come out and gain sympathy. He finally lost his patience. On this day, he flipped over and stood up. He grabbed the blanket and tossed the snoring Hong Tai-long off the bed. He kept his things and waved his hand at the glaring Hong Tai-long. We can't keep waiting like this. Let's go and take a look at the wind god's tomb first. We'll talk after we return. Chapter 12:27. Hong Tai-long loved to hear this. He quickly got up and excitedly rubbed his fists and said, "You should have done this long ago." The two fellows, whose eyes had turned green from looking at the moon every day, almost had the urge to howl at the moon. After getting up, they subconsciously shook their heads together to shake the shadow of the moon out of their minds. Their movements were so coordinated that they patted their butts and slipped away together. Shouldn't you change your tattered clothes? Anyway, you can no longer win your master's sympathy. There's no need to pretend to be pitiful, right? Sigh. It takes 3 years to get new, 3 years to get old, and another 3 years to sew and mend. I'm used to being thrifty. Forget it. I can't be too shabby when I'm outside. It doesn't matter if I lose my face. Anyway, no one knows me. The key is to lose the face of the dragon clan's emissary. I'm sorry to the coiling dragon god. What does it have to do with my dragon clan? Don't change it for the rest of your life if you have the guts. I've always been respectful to the dead. I've long admired Senior Wind God's great name. I'm going there with the mentality of a pilgrimage. It's too sloppy. I'd better change it. The dead are the most important. I can't be disrespectful to the dead. Don't give me that. You say one thing but think another. You've done all the good things and all the bad things. Do you think I don't know what you're thinking? You're afraid that people will see that you're a thief and feel guilty, right? Hong Tai-long. What kind of good person do you think you are? You've already done your homework, and you're still inciting me to do bad things. Why are you pretending to be a gentleman now? Damn it. If you make me angry, I'll make you stay here and guard the tomb for the rest of your life. What are you looking at? Try being long-winded again. I can't beat the demon god, but can't I beat you? Ah. Ruthless villain, you're ruthless. Along the way, according to Hong Tai-long, the wind god was the person with the highest cultivation in the divine mausoleum after his death. The place where he was buried was also the highest place in the divine mausoleum. The so-called highest place was the place closest to the moon in the sky. It was the highest mountain in the mausoleum of the god of sin. When the two of them arrived at the highest mountain range, they realized that the wind god's tomb wasn't the only one here. There were tombs made of blood jade and red crystals all over the mountains. Under the gorgeous moonlight, the tombs glowed with a dark red light. From afar, the entire mountain range looked like a monster with eyes all over its body. At the highest peak, there was a tomb that was several sizes larger. The more graves there were, the more people guarding the graves. It would be difficult for them to get close to the graves without being discovered. Thus, the two of them hid in a remote area and discussed the matter. What should we do? If you use the Earth's secret art to dig through here, can you guarantee that you will reach it accurately? Hong Tai-long's expression was very solemn. Yu Qianqiu stared at the peak of the mountain in the distance and muttered, "It's not a problem to arrive precisely, but it's unavoidable that we have to check our position during the process. I'm afraid that we'll be discovered by someone. That won't do. Once the news of me robbing the tombs spreads out, the other tomb guards will definitely check the tombs they are guarding. If they discover that as long as I've been to a place, the tombs have been robbed, there's no way to explain it. For the dragon race to do such a thing, it's too damaging to the dragon race's dignity." Hong Tai-long shook his head firmly, insisting that Yu Qianqiu think of a more reliable method. It's easy to not be discovered. Actually, it's still the old method that's more reliable. It's just that this time, we're targeting more people. Use your identity as the dragon race's envoy to gather all the tomb guards in this mountain range. Just say that you're investigating the details of the murder of the wind god's tomb guards, Tianfeng and Difeng. Hearing this, Hong Tailong bared his teeth. However, when he saw Yu Qianzhou's expression of, "I'll listen to you if you have a better idea," he placed his hands on his waist and spun around a few times. Then, he shook his red-haired head and faced Yu Qianzhou. He made up his mind and said, "This is the last time. Don't do it again." After saying this, he flew towards the mountain range ahead. Yu Qianzhou chuckled and sat down to wait. Soon, he saw streams of light flying towards a corner of the mountain range. After waiting for a while longer, Hong Tailong's voice transmission came. "It's about time. We can make our move now." The other party's tone was like that of a thief. However, Yu Qianzhou became spirited. He carefully determined the location of the main peak of the mountain range. Then, as if he was sitting on an elevator, he directly sank into the ground and disappeared. Underground, it was as if he was moving forward in a bubble. Everywhere he went, the mud and rocks parted for him. Along the way, he poked his head out from the ground halfway up the mountain. He stealthily determined the location again and continued diving down. What a person! Now that he had reached this level, his sneaky style still hadn't changed. After reaching the center of the main peak, he directly ascended. Not long later, there was a layer of blood jade and red crystals blocking his way. Without a second word, he broke through the layer and jumped up. The area of the tomb was obviously bigger than the tombs he had raided before. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was as big as a hole. However, this wasn't what he was concerned about. He was only concerned about the wind god's corpse. However, the bed of blood jade and red crystals in the middle was empty. Where did the corpse go? Yu Qianzhou was puzzled. He looked around and was shocked when he raised his head to look at the dome above. He saw an almost naked, well-built man floating above. Strands of red light densely covered his body. It was extremely strange. The scariest thing was that the other party was actually looking at him with his eyes wide open. Damn it! What kind of joke was this? Could it be that the wind god had already been resurrected? Yu Qianzhou's heart was beating like a drum. Then, he comforted himself. Maybe the eyes of the corpse were always open. It was just like how people sleep with their eyes open. There was a saying that went, "Die with everlasting regret." He coughed and pretended not to see the corpse. With his hands behind his back, he acted like nothing had happened. It seemed like he had entered this place by mistake. He slowly wandered to the corner. Suddenly, he raised his head and heaved a sigh of relief. The corpse was still staring in one direction without moving. Damn it! I was almost scared to death. That's strange. Why is the corpse floating? Halfway through his monologue, the muscles on Yu Qianzhou's face began to twitch. He saw the corpse's eyeballs slowly moving, and its head slowly tilted to the side. That gaze seemed to see everything as rotten, and there was no emotion in it. It was not cold, but there was no expression. It was like looking at a blank piece of paper. It was as simple as that. Then, the floating body slowly descended and stood barefoot on the stone bed of blood jade and red crystals. Your senior wind god. Yu Qianzhou coughed and bowed respectfully. He had already communicated with Utopia and was prepared to escape at any time. This was because he could not see through the other party's cultivation with his cultivation of a late-stage great god. It was not difficult for him to determine who the other party was. He was just having a headache. What about Hong Tailong, who had gathered a group of tomb guards for a meeting after he escaped? It was another matter whether he would be beaten to death if he left that guy behind. The key was that only that guy knew how to set up the passageway from the netherworld divine manor to the divine realm. I'm Wings of Wind God. Who are you? That person seemed to have not spoken for a long time. His lips moved slightly, letting out a hoarse and rough voice. His eyes were still looking at him without any expression, as if he was a jade statue that had been buried with him. Yu Qianqiu cupped his fists in a graceful manner and said, Junior Yu Qianqiu has long admired Senior Wind God's great name. I've specially come to pay a visit. His face was filled with a harmless smile, but his mind was still thinking about how to rescue Hong Tailong while ensuring his own safety. Yu Qianqiu. The hoarse voice had a hint of taste. He shook his head slightly, as if he could not remember this person. Then, he sighed softly in a hoarse voice and said, Have Tianfeng and Diffing been killed by someone? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. His mind was filled with doubts. Since the wind god had been resurrected, why was he still staying here instead of going out? With his abilities, how could he sit back and watch as his two subordinates were killed by that old guy? Especially when he asked this question, it was even more confusing. Senior, don't you know? Yu Qianqiu tried to ask. The strong and almost naked wind god stood on the stone bed like a stone statue and said slowly in a hoarse voice, The two of them are the entities cultivated by the fusion of the heavenly soul and the earthly soul of my 3 physical souls and 7 physical souls with the wind spirit. Although my 7 physical souls have been destroyed, my life soul is still attached to my broken body. After I woke up, I couldn't sense the two of them. I think they are gone. Senior, you just resurrected not long ago. Yu Qianqiu asked in surprise, but the other party did not answer. Obviously, it was a tacit agreement. However, it also solved the question that puzzled Yu Qianqiu just now. Then, he cupped his fists and said regretfully, Senior, to tell you the truth, Tianfeng and Diffing were indeed killed by an expert who suddenly appeared. This should have happened not long before you woke up. An expert who suddenly appeared. The wind god chuckled in a hoarse and sad voice. The mausoleum of the God of God has a boundary of heaven personally set up by Tao. If he did not secretly push things, who could break through his boundary of heaven and break in? Even the great god Yi or the war god Rui Xingxing could not break in. It is said that the great way is ruthless. Tao. You are ruthless. So cruel. You want to draw a prison and imprison my lonely soul. As long as I don't follow your great way, you will make it so that I can never be resurrected. Yu Qianqiu frowned. He knew that there were 2 people who could enter and exit the boundary of heaven at will. If it was said that Taishu Xian was released by the mysterious Tao, he might believe it. As for Bai Changchun and Xinyu, they couldn't be released by Tao, right? Senior Wind God, didn't I see that you have resurrected? Yu Qianqiu asked suspiciously. Resurrected? My physical body may have resurrected, but this lonely soul of mine is neither yin nor yang. It is just that the remnant of my divine sense is not extinguished. As long as I walk out of this cage of blood jade and red crystals and come into contact with any yin and yang aura, I will immediately turn into ashes. The so-called resurrection is just a joke. In the game rules of Tao, the dead can never be resurrected. The only way is to reincarnate. Only by giving up everything in the previous life can one be reborn. Chapter 12:28. These words shocked Yu Qianqiu. He subconsciously asked, could it be that the legend of resurrection in this blood jade red crystal tomb is fake? It couldn't be more real. But after resurrection, I can't even step out of this tomb. What's the difference between being alive and being dead? Wind God let out a self-deprecating chuckle in a hoarse voice. He looked around the tomb listlessly. I realized this a long time ago. That's why I separated the heaven soul and earth soul of the 3 souls and 7 spirits to create the 2 messengers, heaven wind and earth wind. This was so that if an accident happened in the future, I could merge with them after resurrection. After the three souls merged, even if my cultivation couldn't return to its peak, I could at least walk freely in this boundary formation of heavens. I thought this was done secretly, but I didn't expect that before I resurrected, heaven wind and earth wind met with an accident. It seems that Tao must have known about this long ago. Yu Qianqiu laughed in his heart. He knew Bai Changchun too well. How could he be ordered to plot against others? No matter how powerful Tao was, old Bai wouldn't be a lackey of Tao. It was only because heaven wind and earth wind had the highest cultivation in the mausoleum of the god of sin that they were worth challenging. What did it have to do with Tao? Wind god thought too much. Senior Wind God, I've heard of Tao for a long time. I wonder who this Tao is, and how high is his cultivation. How can he intimidate the gods of heaven and earth? Yu Qianqiu asked curiously. I've never seen the true face of Tao. I can vaguely feel his existence when he appears, but it's illusory. As for how high his cultivation is, no one has seen him fight, so there's no way to judge. But the pressure and momentum when he appears is indeed very powerful. Even the great god Yi and coiling dragon are willing to listen to his orders. It can be seen that his cultivation must be terrifyingly high, and no one dares to test his depth. Speaking of this, he seemed to think of something. He suddenly stared at Yu Qianqiu. You haven't told me who you are, and why you broke into my tomb. You seem to have used the earth spirit technique when you came in just now. A faint green light appeared in her eyes as she examined him. Ah! Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He knew that sometimes speaking the truth was very hurtful. It was just like meeting a woman. Regardless of whether she was beautiful or not, a casual compliment would make the other party happy. Conversely, it would only make the other party angry. Therefore, he could never tell the other party that he was here to steal his corpse. He coughed and said, I am a tomb keeper in the tomb of the god of sin. How is this possible? The wind god suddenly exclaimed and interrupted him. His eyes widened as if he had seen something unbelievable. Yu Qianqiu's heart skipped a beat. Hong Tailong nodded and listened with a solemn expression. From time to time, he would even find a topic to talk about, trying his best to stall for time. On the surface, he looked calm, but his eyes kept glancing at the main peak of the mountain range. He thought to himself, what the hell is this brat doing? Why isn't he done yet? Did something happen to him? His good intentions didn't come true, but his bad intentions came true. Suddenly, a sorrowful and angry shout rang out, causing him to shudder in fear. As the earth quaked and the mountains shook, all the tomb guards looked at the main peak of the mountain range in horror. Suddenly, someone exclaimed, the wind god has resurrected, the wind god has resurrected. As soon as this was said, everyone flew towards the main peak of the mountain range with indescribable joy. The wind god has resurrected. Before Hong Tailong could wrap his head around the situation, he suddenly realized that the huge tomb on the main peak of the mountain range was slowly being uprooted from the inlaid mountain and rising into the sky. His forehead instantly broke out in a cold sweat. Putting aside Yu Qianqiu's life and death, just the fact that the wind god was killed by the coiling dragon old ancestor meant that the wind god would not let him off easily the moment he saw him, the dragon envoy. Wiping off his cold sweat, Hong Tailong immediately turned into a beam of light and fled. As he fled, he even gritted his teeth and smiled bitterly as he muttered to himself, Yu Qianqiu, it's not that I'm not loyal enough to abandon you and run away alone. But you have the Star Pearl's teleportation ability, so escaping shouldn't be a problem. You have to run away. If you die in the hands of the wind god, I won't be able to leave this place. Yu Qianqiu, who had fled back to Utopia, patted his chest for a while with lingering fear. He felt that it was a close shave. When the wind god's claw came, he could not move at all. His divine sense was also imprisoned and could not move. If he had not been vigilant and had his divine sense hooked up with utopia long ago, he would have escaped with just a thought. Otherwise, he would have fallen into the hands of the wind god. Remembering that Hong Tai Long was still in the mausoleum of the god of sin, Yu Qianqiu hurriedly barged into the ethereal palace. Ignoring the questions of others, he found Shen Yu and dragged him to the isolation zone between the endless dark cliff and the celestial boundary. Shen Yu was already used to it and naturally knew what he had to do. He jumped into the netherworld river and transformed into a mussel, carrying Yu Qianqiu against the current. As soon as he stepped into the territory of the mausoleum of the god of sin, Yu Qianqiu immediately threw Shen Yu back to utopia and flew toward the mountain where the wind god was buried. A day later, flying at high speed, Yu Qianqiu, who was constantly vigilant of his surroundings, suddenly discovered a familiar figure hiding in a call at the side. Yu Qianqiu was stunned for a moment before he rushed over with joy. Flying above the call, he saw Hong Tai Long sneakily burrowing under a crack of a rock. He looked very careful and did not seem to want to make any noise. Yu Qianqiu landed on the rock and frowned as he stared below. Hong Tai Long. What are you doing? What treasure are you hiding? Ha! Hong Tai Long retreated quickly. When he saw that it was Yu Qianqiu, he heaved a sigh of relief. I saw someone flying over from afar and thought that I had been exposed, so I wanted to hide first. I didn't expect it to be you. I knew that you would be able to escape. It's good that you are not dead. It's good that you are not dead. What happened? Has the tomb rating been exposed? I wanted to ask you what happened. Why did the wind gods suddenly revive? Hong Tai Long recounted what he had heard, as well as the scene of the wind god's tomb flying. It can't leave the tomb, but it can move along with it. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He had thought that since the wind god couldn't leave the tomb, it would definitely instruct the tomb guards to target him. He did not expect the wind god to move along with the tomb. This place was too dangerous. He did not think that he could defeat the wind god just because he hid in the tomb. He looked around warily, waved his hand, and said, "We shouldn't stay here for long. Let's go back first." The two of them disappeared. After returning to Utopia, the two of them stood on the cliff of Ethereal Peak. Yu Qianqiu told Hong Tai Long about the process of encountering the wind god's revival. After Hong Tai Long heard it, he was stunned for a moment before saying, "Then what's the point of this revival? In that case, isn't this mausoleum of the god of sin a place of death row prisoners? Is the Tao lying?" His expression seemed to be unable to accept that the Tao that his dragon race served was actually a liar. Yu Qianqiu glanced at him and did not say anything else. He walked to the edge of the cliff and summoned 80 earth souls and 10 golden souls. He scattered them to the ground at the bottom of the cliff and held the 10 fire souls in his hands before disappearing from the cliff alone. Half a day later, Yu Qianqiu appeared on the cliff again. His entire body was surrounded by true samadhi fire. Following him were 10 fire soul mystic soldiers that were burning with true samadhi fire. They stood in a row behind him with an astonishing aura. He looked at the setting sun in the distant sky. The wind blew the colorful flames on his body. He extended a flaming palm down the cliff and summoned, "My mystic soldiers, come out." Chapter 12:29. With this deep summon, the ground beneath the cliff started to crack. 90 figures shot out rapidly from the ground and landed on the cliff. Yu Qianqiu retracted his palm, and the true samadhi fire that was lingering around his body also retracted into his body. He slowly turned around to look at them. The 80 Earth Soul Mystic Soldiers were like stone giants, the 10 Golden Soul Mystic Soldiers were like armored generals, and the 10 Fire Soul Mystic Soldiers were like demons from hell. There was a total of 100 of them. There were 16 late-stage great gods, 30 mid-stage great gods, and 54 early-stage great gods. The bodies of the Golden Soul Mystic Soldiers were clearly much thinner than the other two types. It was clear that the metal elements beneath the cliff were not enough for them to absorb. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and pointed in the direction of Utopia's military camp. The 10 golden soul mystic soldiers shot into the sky rapidly and started to divide up the metal body that was left behind when they devoured Jin Tai. Hong Tai Long, who was frowning and in deep thought, had long been startled awake by such a huge scene. He opened his mouth and sized up the large pile of mystic soldiers, crying out, "Yu Qianqiu, what are you trying to do by creating such a huge scene?" "What? What do you think I'm trying to do?" Yu Qianqiu let out a F*** and waved his hand in high spirits. "I'm going to the demon realm to fight Demon Lord 3 nights. Damn it! My heaven-splitting arrow is still in his hands. If I don't snatch it back, I'll be in pain even in my dreams. Now that I can't find anyone to help me, I can only do it myself. If I can't fight with brute force, I'll try to outsmart him." Hong Tai Long pointed at the large group of mystic soldiers and rolled his eyes. "You call this outsmart him? I think you're saying it the other way around. We're going to fight with brute force, and we're going to risk our lives, right? It doesn't matter if it's the other way around or not. We're going to fight anyway. If we can't win, we'll just run. You have to consider this carefully. Demon Lord 3 Nights has the support of Demon Lord 3 Nights. It's useless no matter how many mystic soldiers you bring. I'll say this first. I'm not going to take that risk with you. Demon Lord 3 Nights is much more terrifying than Wind God." Hong Tai Long shrank his head with a cautious expression. "I didn't ask you to go." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and sneered, "I don't believe that emotion will stay in the demon realm to support Xinyi every day. This time, I want to end the battle quickly with a sneak attack and catch him off guard. It would be best if I can kill Xinyi." When Hong Tai Long saw his expression, he knew that this fellow's stupidity was starting to come out again. He reckoned that he would not be able to persuade him anymore. After frowning and pondering for a while, he carefully said, "I won't stop your great undertaking of revenge, but, can you send me to the Netherworld Divine Palace first? If something happens to you, I can at least go to the Divine Realm and report to Coiling Dragon Ancestor. Maybe I can even avenge you." "Jinx!" Yu Qianqiu spat and ignored him. He thought to himself, "If something happens to me, you better stay here obediently." At this moment, the 10 golden soul profound soldiers flew back from the camp. Their bodies were shining with golden light and they were clearly much bigger than before. One of the golden soul profound soldiers stretched out his arm and brought Jin Tai's golden cloud rod over. Yu Qianqiu took it and weighed it in his hand. After confirming that he could control it freely, he disappeared from the cliff alone. The 100 profound soldiers silently lined up in their original positions, waiting to be summoned at any time. In the demon realm, ever since Yu Qianqiu was defeated, the scattered armies of the 3 realms had nowhere to run and were inevitably brutally wiped out. Other than a small number of people who survived the endless humiliation, the hundreds of billions of people were almost completely wiped out. The smell of blood lingered in the air for a long time. Inside the demon palace, a naked man and woman were having sex on the blood jade throne. Madame Blackpool did her best to cater to Demon Lord 3 Nights, panting and moaning, her voice resounding. Outside the demon palace, Wu Feng and the others, who were controlled by the demon eye, were silently guarding the plaza. In the center of the plaza, tens of thousands of divine swords were still stabbed into the ground, as if waiting for their owners to come and retrieve them. Not far from the mountain range was a huge pit. It was the pit that Yu Qianqiu had smashed into when he was heavily injured. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu silently appeared inside again. He had once vomited a large amount of blood here, so it was not strange that he could teleport here. He peeked out half of his head to look at the demon palace on the other side of the mountain. He immediately saw Wu Feng and the others standing guard there. He immediately retracted his head and spat in his mind. As expected, those fellows had already been controlled by Demon King 3 Nights. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so dedicated to guarding the Demon King's home. Rolling his eyes, he quietly sunk into the ground again and rapidly opened up a space underground, summoning the 100 profound soldiers over. With a wave of his hand, the 80 Earth Soul profound soldiers immediately opened up a path underground. He, along with the 10 Gold Soul profound soldiers and 10 Fire Soul profound soldiers, followed behind and stealthily headed towards the Demon Palace. When they reached the bottom of the mountain, the group of people began to slowly ascend. They were probably close to the peak. Little did he know that Yu Qianqiu didn't even know that the demon god's clone was still sealed in his body. He only thought that with his strength, he would be able to finish him off before the demon god appeared. If he knew that the demon god's clone was still sealed in his body, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't have dared to take the risk even if he had 10 guts. At this moment, 2 Golden Soul Mystic Soldiers' palms had already stabbed into Demon King 3 Knight's chest. Before blood could spurt out, the other Mystic Soldiers attacked valiantly. Seeing that Demon King 3 Knights was about to die in front of him, Yu Qianqiu raised his golden cloud rod like Sun Wukong and laughed sinisterly. He was prepared to charge forward and smash his rod for revenge. However, before he could smile, he couldn't smile anymore. At the same time that Demon King 3 Knights touched his brow, a ball of black light rapidly appeared and enveloped him. A terrifying and frightening aura surged out in all directions like a mountain that could topple a pillar. The 46 profound soldiers that surrounded the demon monarch of 3 Knights were sent flying with a loud bang. Yu Qianqiu was also sent flying with a mouthful of fresh blood. Boom! A deafening sound rang out. The earth shook and the mountains shook, causing the sky to change color. From afar, it looked as if the entire Devil Palace had fallen apart in an instant. The tall mountain that stood atop the Devil Palace was blown away like a pile of dust. The intense battle outside was like a leaf blown away by a gust of wind. Those with low cultivation were directly turned into dust, and those with cultivation below the level of a great god were all killed. Yu Qianqiu, who was sent flying, crashed into a small mountain. He staggered as he got up and swayed. Everything in front of him was swaying, and his mind was blank. The golden cloud rod in his hand was nowhere to be seen. Blood seeped out of his eyes, nose, lips, and ears. It could be said that he was bleeding from all 7 orifices. He shook his head violently and looked at the mountain that had been turned into dust in front of him with a face full of fear. The naked Demon King 3 Knights floated in the air and looked down at his cracked chest. He didn't know where his heart was. Damn it! The demon god's clone is actually in 3 Knights' body. Yu Qianqiu, who had woken up, finally figured out what was going on. He was so frightened that he shivered. He looked around and gave another order to those Xian soldiers who were recklessly getting up and continuing to attack Demon King 3 Knights. Run! He didn't have the time to gather them and bring them back. Those Xian soldiers immediately turned and fled. Demon King 3 Knights didn't seem to be interested in the escaping Xian soldiers. He looked around coldly and locked onto Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched. If he didn't escape now, then when would he? He instantly disappeared. Demon King 3 Knights' eyes were filled with anger as his deafening voice resounded through the sky. How dare you attack the body that I possess? Pay with your life. A black light flashed out of Demon King 3 Knights' body and shot into the sky, disappearing into the blue dome of heaven. Demon Monarch 3 Knights' body powerlessly fell from the sky, smashing into the dust and becoming a bloody mess. The people of the Devil Realm that had rushed over from all directions were dumbfounded, and flew over in fear. Chapter 1230. Yu Qianqiu, who had fled back to Utopia in a panic, sat down on a cliff. When Hong Tai Long saw how he was bleeding from his 7 orifices, he immediately jumped up in shock. Where's the dark weapon you brought? Did you encounter a demonic god again? Yu Qianqiu nodded. He quickly inspected his injuries and found that even though the commotion from earlier was quite frightening, it was much better than his previous injuries. It was just that he had been badly frightened, to the point that his legs were a little weak. I told you, but you didn't listen. Now look at you. You're just asking for trouble. Hong Tai Long furrowed his brows and reprimanded him. Finally, he sighed and said, "It's a blessing and the misfortune that you managed to escape alive again. It's good that you're alive." Before he could finish his sentence, their expressions changed at the same time. The atmosphere in Utopia instantly became abnormally heavy, as though something terrifying was staring at them. The two of them slowly raised their heads and looked up into the sky. A pair of dreamlike gigantic demonic eyes appeared high up in the sky and locked onto the ground below. This wasn't the first time he had seen this pair of eyes. Yu Qianzhou was all too familiar with them. He didn't expect them to track them all the way to Utopia. He was almost scared out of his wits. Hong Tai Long was also dumbfounded. With such an oppressive aura descending from the sky, as long as he wasn't a fool, he would be able to guess whose eyes those belonged to. He swallowed his saliva with difficulty and said, "It's a demonic god." Everyone in the ethereal palace came out in shock and looked at the sky in horror. Many people didn't know what was going on, and it wasn't the first time they had seen it. For example, Nongzhu had seen it back in Spirit Fong Valley. Yu Qianzhou's pupils contracted. He immediately realized that a demonic god wouldn't appear here for no reason. His heart trembled, and he immediately cried out to the people who had come out of Ethereal Palace, "It's a demonic god. Let's go." Nongzhu also shouted to everyone with a pale face, "Everyone, disperse." Rumble. A muffled sound rang out in the sky, causing the sky to change color. A crack in the void suddenly appeared in the sky, and a hideous demonic claw with monstrous demonic chi stretched out from the crack, stirring up waves of wind and thunder, and slammed down. Yu Qianzhou's eyes widened. He could not save everyone in time. Biting his lip, he disappeared with Hong Tai Long. Boom! A loud sound rang out, as if the heavens were falling and the earth was splitting apart. The ethereal palace, along with the entire mountain, was smashed into smithereens. Monstrous demonic chi swept out in all directions like demonic dragons, sweeping through everything in its path. The people who had already fled far away were all sent flying by the shocking demonic chi. Although Nongzhu had always been at odds with Jade Flower Fairy, she still wanted to protect the mother and daughter at the critical moment. But at the most dangerous moment, the husband and wife resolutely put protecting their daughter first. However, their cultivation was not enough to resist the remaining power of the Fiend Celestial. Under the Fiend Celestial Lord Crocodile's attack, they turned into ashes. Even though they had blocked the attack for their daughter, Ze was still seriously injured. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. A huge river clam jumped out of the dust. After a flash of light, Shen Yu appeared. He shook his head dizzily, and he could not stand steadily. At the critical moment, he revealed his true form to protect himself. The shell of the river clam actually blocked the attack of the Fiend Celestial for him, and he was unharmed. It was a miracle. In the distance, Wu Lishue flew over with a group of people. When he saw the scene in front of him, he was stunned. The Wu family was lucky. Wu Lishue wanted to bring his family around Utopia, so he asked Guan Yu, who was familiar with this place, to guide them. However, they did not expect to avoid a disaster because of this. After realizing that something was wrong, they rushed over, but they did not expect this to happen. When Guan Yu saw Bai Suzhen, who was covered in blood, he immediately rushed over to support her. He asked anxiously, "Sister Bai, are you okay?" With Wu Sihai's command, the Wu family immediately scattered and rushed over to help the injured. Yu Qianzhou, who had escaped to the immortal world with Hong Tai Long, did not even have time to catch his breath. Another crack in the void appeared high in the sky, and the fiend celestial claw attacked again. Fiend celestial, F***ck your ancestors. Yu Qianqiu cursed angrily and disappeared with Hong Tailong. He turned to Utopia, and directly appeared on the island where Lu Yanqing and Wen Lanfeng lived in seclusion. Lu Yanqing and Wen Lanfeng were also frightened by the shocking movement in the distance. The two stood at the highest point of the island and looked into the distance. Lu Yanqing. Quickly go to the Misty Palace to save them, quickly. Yu Qianqiu hurriedly said. He did not dare to stay for too long, afraid that he would bring disaster to Utopia again. He disappeared in an instant. Lu Yanqing's expression froze. She said to Wen Lanfeng, who had lost all his cultivation, "Wait for me here. I'll go take a look." In the Fiend Celestial world, Yu Qianqiu appeared in the direction of the Fiend Celestial Palace with Hong Tailong, who was still in shock. At this moment, a group of Fiend Celestials were kneeling in front of Demon Monarch 3 Knight's corpse, looking very sad. Yu Qianqiu's appearance gave them a fright. No one thought that they were his match. They immediately hugged Demon Monarch 3 Knight's corpse and fled in panic. Yu Qianqiu was not in the mood to settle the score with them. Under the repeated urging of the pheasant, he simply told it about the demonic god's pursuit. Then, he stared at the lion at its feet and asked, "Who is this?" The pheasant proudly introduced, Rainbow-Feathered Lion King. The descendant of the divine illusionary realm's divine guardian beast of the Phoenix Temple. Don't look down on its current cultivation. If it obtains the inheritance, it will become very powerful. Chapter 1231. The Divine Realm, the original Light Palace, and now the Demon Domain. Above the towering cliff shrouded in demonic clouds, a lonely figure was facing the never-ending wind above the 9th heaven. His stalwart body was motionless, only the black waistcoat wrapped around his body was fluttering in the wind. His long hair was fluttering, and his diamond-like eyes were flashing with anger. A cultivator of the late stage of the great god realm had repeatedly escaped from his hands, which really made him angry. Standing on the edge of the cliff, he gently took a step into the void. It seemed to be a casual step, but he had crossed thousands of miles. In the blink of an eye, he was already in the endless stars of the universe. The vast sea of stars for him was like a leisurely stroll. Just as he was about to take another step, suddenly there were two groups of light and shadows in front of him. A golden dragon of thousands of feet long drilled out of the void, roaming among the endless stars. As the golden scales opened and closed, a majestic dragon breath spread into the depths of the endless universe. A phoenix of thousands of feet long flew out of the void, dragging a long colorful tail, flapping its wings and flying in the brilliant starry sky. An ancient and sacred aura flowed back and forth along with the colorful halos around its body. Roar! The divine dragon roared in the starry sky, meandering over, winding and coiling together. The majestic dragon head stood with its chest out, looking majestically at the man wrapped in a black waistcoat below. Clang clang! The colorful phoenix issued a sonorous ancient sound in the starry sky, swaying and swaying, looking at the man wrapped in a black waistcoat with a noble and auspicious expression. In front of these two ancient beasts, the stalwart body of demon god Night was as small as an ant in this vast starry sky. He looked at the two ancient beasts in front of him and snorted coldly, "Coiling dragon, Phoenix, are you two a match for me?" The two beasts shone with a magnificent light, more and more dazzling, making people not dare to look directly at them, but demon god Night ignored them. The strong light suddenly disappeared, and a strong man with a bare upper body wearing a pair of knee-length yellow shorts appeared. His muscles were full and strong like stones, his skin was bronze, his eyes were bright and full of expression, and his whole body was covered with a faint golden glow. A plump woman in a long dress stood in the starry sky, her clothes indescribably gorgeous, her beauty so noble that all women in the world felt ashamed of their inferiority. Her beautiful eyes were full of spirit, and her body was covered with a faint layer of sacred light. This man and woman were the legendary ancient god coiling dragon and ancient god phoenix. "Nate, what, do you want to fight us?" The noble ancient phoenix god smiled faintly. He could tell that Yu Qianqiu and Hong Tailong's cultivation were higher than his. "Ah!" Pheasant suddenly thought of something and exclaimed, "Bad guy. Demon god is chasing you. Is Sister Shui all right?" Yu Qianqiu closed his eyes, and the tragic scene in Utopia appeared in his mind. After opening his eyes, he shook his head slightly and said, "She's fine." When the pheasant heard that, it patted its chest with its wings and seemed to heave a sigh of relief. Phoenix Divine Temple. Hong Tailong muttered to himself repeatedly. Suddenly, his eyes lit up as he said, "Little Phoenix, is the Phoenix Divine Temple that the great Phoenix God built in the Divine Void realm still there?" "It is. I've already found it," Pheasant said excitedly. Suddenly, he said with vigilance, "Bad Hong Tailong, are you planning something?" He had long felt that this dragon and bad guys were birds of a feather, and he was the scum of the dragon race. Hong Tailong didn't answer him. Instead, he pulled Yu Qianqiu excitedly and said, "Yu Qianqiu, we don't need to hide anymore. The Phoenix Temple is the place where the Phoenix God cultivated in seclusion. As long as we hide in the Phoenix Temple, unless the demon god comes personally, he might not be able to break through the temple's protective restriction. Let's quickly hide in the Phoenix Temple." The rainbow-feathered Lion King suddenly said, "The temple is protected by a restriction. We can't enter. Even little Phoenix couldn't enter after trying for a long time. Only with the protection of the Phoenix cloud robe can we enter safely." Pheasant nodded repeatedly like a chick pecking rice. "Yes. Only Sister Shui can enter." "Ah." Hong Tailong was startled. "Little Phoenix, you're saying that heartless girl Wu Lixue has the Phoenix cloud robe? You're the heartless one, afraid of death, the scum of the dragon race," Pheasant said with disdain. Hong Tailong straightened his neck and explained, "Little Phoenix, children shouldn't speak nonsense if they don't know anything. How can this be called being afraid of death? This is called that where there's life, there's hope. Besides, I'm also thinking about your sister Shui's safety. Do you understand?" Yu Qianqiu only roughly listened to their conversation. His attention was still on the surroundings. After a while, he didn't notice any movement. He couldn't help but ask curiously, "What's going on? Could it be that the demon god can't detect that we've entered the divine illusionary realm, or has he given up on killing us? Why hasn't there been any movement until now?" When he said this, Hong Tailong also came back to his senses. He looked around and said curiously, "That's right. It's been a long time. What's going on? Wait for me here. I'll go out and take a look." Yu Qianqiu said and disappeared on the spot. After quickly passing through Utopia, he appeared in the immortal world again. Those who died directly or indirectly at his hands, especially the hundreds of billions of soldiers that he forced to their deaths in the demon world, added up, even he himself couldn't count how many people he had killed. In his daze, he muttered to himself with a confused look in his eyes, "Did I really do something wrong?" Chapter 1232. Bai Suzhen, dressed in a blood-stained white dress, slowly walked up to him. She leaned her cheek on his shoulder and said in a low voice, "Take me to the blue sea deathly realm." Her tone was indifferent but extremely determined. Yu Qianqiu turned around with one arm around the crying hibiscus. Looking at Bai Suzhen's emotionless face, he knew that she wanted to use the blue sea essence to refine her body and quickly improve her cultivation. She hoped that one day, she could take revenge on the demon god. Of course, he could totally refuse to take her there, but how could he refuse under such circumstances? He had caused such a huge disaster and even caused the death of her adoptive father. How could he refuse? All right. Yu Qianqiu, who had been silent for a long time, uttered these two words. He patted Hibiscus's back lightly and let go of her. Holding Bai Suzhen's hand, they disappeared together. The two of them appeared on the island of the Blue Sea Deathly Realm. Holding hands, they quietly looked at the deadly light pillars that shot into the sky from time to time. Bai Suzhen wanted to let go of his hand and dive into the sea, but Yu Qianqiu held her hand tightly. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. I'll go with you. A bubble wrapped around the two of them as they dove into the deep blue sea. When they reached the bottom of the sea, they did not find the blue sea gold essence. Instead, they saw the deadly light pillars that shot out from the bottom of the sea. Yu Qianqiu performed the water spell and pointed at them. An undercurrent immediately appeared in the water and swept away the sand that covered the bottom of the sea. The moment the sand at the bottom of the sea was swept away, a translucent metal that looked like a blue crystal gradually appeared in front of them. The blue radiance that blossomed from it dyed the underwater world a bright and snowy blue. It made them feel as if they were in a blue fairy tale world. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand anxiously, and the undercurrent in the water uncovered a blue translucent metal that was almost a kilometer in circumference. Its surface was bumpy and uneven, and some parts were even protruding. A majestic aura that made one's mind sway as if they were in a dream. And this was just the tip of the iceberg of the blue transparent metal. If all the silt at the bottom of the sea was removed, who knew how big this strange meteorite would be? On the surface of the blue transparent metal, there were blue streams of lightning like flowing light. Whenever two streams of flowing light collided, they would immediately erupt into a fatal blue beam of light that shot towards the surface of the sea. According to the records of the Myriad Demon Heart Sutra, that should be the essence of the blue sea. Bai Suzhen pointed to a place. Yu Qianqiu looked over and saw that there was a groove on the surface of the blue transparent metal. There was a pool of blue liquid quietly swimming in it. It was beautiful and dazzling, shining with blue and gorgeous colors. Just one more look at it would be able to pull one's mind into it and make one drunk for a long time. The strange thing was that this magnificent blue liquid was clearly in the sea, but it did not merge with the seawater. The blue flowing light on the surface of the transparent blue metal came from that liquid. It seemed to be the source of the blue flowing light. I think we should give up. It's too dangerous. Yu Qianqiu could not help but advise her. His face was very solemn. He was very clear about the power of the fatal beam of light, and this blue sea essence was the source of the fatal beam of light. It was too terrifying to try it with one's flesh and blood. What happened to Wen Lanfeng and Yan Zhuixing was a warning. He really did not want Bai Suzhen to become like them. It'll be fine. The experience of the Myriad Demon Heart Sutra can be used as a reference. I will be careful. Bai Suzhen smiled and broke away from her hand. Seeing the worried look on Yu Qianqiu's face, she suddenly stretched out her arms and wrapped them around Yu Qianqiu's neck. Her soft lips were intertwined with his. It was the first time that Yu Qianqiu saw her take the initiative. He could not help but put his hands around her waist and caressed her pert buttocks. His tongue opened her teeth, and it was hard to separate them. In this blue underwater world, a man and a woman in a bubble were getting more and more aroused. The man couldn't hold himself back anymore, and his hands started to touch everywhere. Just as he was about to touch the forbidden area, the woman's body trembled, and she stopped him with her arms, not letting him continue. She shook her head, as if saying that now wasn't the time. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. Bai Suzhen, on the other hand, left the bubble with a bashful expression. She resolutely flew towards the beautiful and enchanting pool of blue liquid. As she floated above, she looked at Yu Qianqiu with a gentle smile, bit her lip, and slowly descended. As soon as her feet came into contact with the blue liquid, strands of blue light quickly spread across her body. A pained expression appeared on Bai Suzhen's face. Yu Qianqiu was shocked. He quickly dodged and said anxiously, "How are you? If you can't, don't try." "I'm fine." Bai Suzhen shook her head and replied. She clenched her teeth and continued to sink down. However, her entire body was trembling uncontrollably. It was obvious that she was suffering from indescribable pain and torture. With a slight tilt, her entire body submerged into the magnificent blue liquid. Seeing her like that, Yu Qianqiu was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. Finally, he steeled his heart and decided to go down and give it a try. If he found that he couldn't bear it anymore, he would immediately take Bai Suzhen away by force. He couldn't let her continue to take risks. However, just as he was about to step in, the golden pearl in his dantian seemed to sense something. It suddenly burst with dazzling golden light. The magnificent blue liquid also burst with blue light. The two kinds of light resisted each other as if they were repelling each other. No matter how hard Yu Qianqiu tried, he couldn't take a step closer. In the end, he was forcefully pushed away. At this moment, the two kinds of light quietly disappeared. Yu Qianqiu looked at himself in confusion. He then looked at the blue liquid. He didn't know what was going on. "Yu Qianqiu, get out of here quickly. I can feel the energy of the blue sea gold essence throbbing when you come near. It's so violent that I almost lost control of my mind." Bai Suzhen's pained voice drifted out from the blue liquid. Yu Qianqiu didn't know why it was like this, but he didn't dare to do it again. After hesitating for a while, for Bai Suzhen's safety, he gritted his teeth and flew out from the bottom of the sea. He landed on the island and waited quietly and anxiously. 3 days later, the restless Yu Qianqiu suddenly saw Bai Suzhen's figure emerging from the bottom of the sea. She stood quietly on the surface of the sea and didn't move an inch. He immediately flashed over and found that Bai Suzhen's eyes had turned a strange blue color. It looked a little scary, and she seemed to be in a daze. Yu Qianqiu was almost scared out of his wits. He quickly asked, "What's wrong with you?" The other party was indifferent, as if she didn't hear him at all. She picked Bai Suzhen up by the waist and flew to the island. Then, she laid her down carefully on the beach. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He saw that the blue light in Bai Suzhen's eyes started to shine with a blue light. It grew stronger and weaker, as if it was gradually being absorbed into her body. Yu Qianqiu grabbed her wrist and checked the situation inside her body. He didn't know if he didn't look, but when he did, he was shocked. Bai Suzhen's cultivation was rising at an unbelievable speed. It seemed like the weaker the blue light in her eyes, the stronger her cultivation would be. It wasn't until the blue light in her eyes had shrunk to the size of a needle tip that her cultivation stopped growing. At this time, Bai Suzhen's cultivation had actually risen to the early stage of minor god. If one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't notice the two needle-tip-sized blue lights in her eyes. The magical effect of the blue sea essence made Yu Qianqiu's jaw drop in disbelief. He couldn't help but look back at the sea, having the urge to try again. At this time, Bai Suzhen's eyes gradually moved and she slowly sat up. However, when she saw her hand was grabbed by Yu Qianqiu, she suddenly shook it off and teleported to the side. She asked coldly, "Who are you?" "I." Yu Qianqiu looked at her nervously and asked with a trembling voice, What's wrong with you?" To be exact, he was panicking. He was worried that Bai Suzhen would turn into a second Wenlan Feng. Fortunately, as soon as Bai Suzhen heard his voice, she immediately shook her head with a pained expression and slowly regained her senses. She looked up at Yu Qianqiu with a somewhat dispirited expression and said apologetically, "I'm fine. It's just that I haven't fully recovered yet." Yu Qianqiu immediately patted his chest and breathed a sigh of relief. He walked over and grabbed her hand. He smiled bitterly and said, "You almost scared me to death just now. It's good that you're fine." Bai Suzhen inadvertently withdrew her hand. She looked at him and said with a smile, "Now is the best time to improve your cultivation while the energy of the blue sea essence has yet to dissipate. Let's go back. I'm going into seclusion for a while." Yu Qianqiu looked at her withdrawing hand in a daze. He almost didn't hear what she said. It was only when she urged him again that he reacted and nodded. He squeezed out a silly smile on his face and enveloped her with his divine sense. They disappeared together. Upon returning to Utopia, Bai Suzhen glanced at the devastated ruins. She didn't greet anyone. She only told Yu Qianqiu that she was going to find a place to go into seclusion. She then quickly flew into the distance alone. No one knew where she was going to go into seclusion. Yu Qianqiu stared blankly in the direction in which she disappeared. He then lowered his head to look at his hand in silence. The feeling of Bai Suzhen's stiff withdrawal had yet to disappear. Wu Lixue, who had been helping Lu Yanqing heal the wounded, walked over. She also looked in the direction in which Bai Suzhen had disappeared and asked curiously, "What's wrong with Sister Bai? Why does her expression look a little strange? What did you do to her?" "She just used the blue sea essence to temper her body. Maybe she hasn't recovered yet. She'll be fine when she recovers," Yu Qianqiu explained in a daze. There was a hint of self-comfort in his tone. "Ah. She won't become like Wenlan Feng, will she?" Wu Lixue said worriedly. "Don't jinx it." Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes. But seeing that this heartless girl was safe and sound in the great calamity, his mood improved a little. He held her white and tender hand and said, "Shuai, let me tell you some good news. I found your pheasant in the divine illusionary realm." Chapter 1233. After bringing the overjoyed Wu Lixue to the divine illusionary realm, Hong Tailong, Pheasant, and the rainbow-feathered Lion King were still waiting for him. Naturally, Wu Lixue and Pheasant hugged and cried out in joy. Hong Tailong approached Yu Qianqiu and asked about the demon god. After learning that the demon god was no longer looking for trouble, Hong Tailong heaved a sigh of relief. "I just don't know if the demon god is not looking for trouble for the time being or if he will come again in the future. How can we live in fear every day?" After Hong Tailong sighed, his eyes suddenly lit up. He elbowed Yu Qianqiu and said, "Oh right, how is your mission to administer punishment on behalf of the heavens? If it's almost done, we might as well seek refuge in the divine realm. With the protection of Coiling Dragon Ancestor at the Divine Dragon Mountain, the demon god may not be able to find us." Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He thought to himself, how the hell do I know what's up with administering punishment on behalf of the heavens? If not for Hong Tailong's reminder, he would have forgotten about it. He had told so many lies that even he almost believed them. Previously, when he was being chased by the demon god, he indeed wanted to seek refuge in the divine realm. However, after Hong Tailong's reminder, he remembered that the Netherworld Divine Manor's passage to the divine realm led directly to the Dragon Clan's Divine Dragon Mountain. When he thought that he would have to face Coiling Dragon Ancestor, he did not dare to go even if he was beaten to death. He coughed dryly and sighed with a face full of melancholy. If it's just to seek refuge, hiding in the all-heavens boundary is the best place. However, the key is that I am not resigned to it. I want to seek revenge on the demon god. Yes. I also think that the all-heavens boundary is a good place to seek refuge. However, the key is that you provoked the wind god. If we go there, aren't we courting death?" Hong Tailong sneered disdainfully. "Seek revenge on the demon god. So many peak experts in the divine realm can't do anything to the demon god. Do you think you can get revenge? I think we should hide first." Sigh. The ultimate mission of administering punishment on behalf of the heavens is to eradicate the demon god, Yu Qianqiu said solemnly as he looked at Hong Tailong. Hong Tailong's mouth was agape as his expression stiffened. The muscles on his face twitched violently twice. Then, he revealed a smile that was uglier than a crying face as he cried out in grief, "It can't be. Are you kidding me? Why would you accept such an impossible task? You think I want to?" Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and continued to bluff, "Do you think I can refuse? It's over, it's all over." Hong Tailong sighed as he shook his head. He had lost all his spirit in an instant. The blow he had received was too great. Wu Lixue, Pheasant, and the rainbow-feathered Lion King were speechless when they heard that Yu Qianqiu had such a great mission. It's not like there's no way to deal with the demon god. The rainbow-feathered Lion King, who had been silent all this while, suddenly said something shocking. "What is it?" The few of them looked at him in unison. The rainbow-feathered lion Wang Xiongjin walked around a few times. There was some hesitation in his eyes, as if he didn't know whether he should say it or not. Pheasant immediately lost his patience. He stood on Wu Lixue's shoulder and shouted, "Lion King, just say it." Seeing that Pheasant had spoken, the rainbow-feathered Lion King nodded his head and slowly said, "I don't know if you've heard of the great god Yi's heaven and earth splitting arrow and the supreme divine bow." The few of them looked at him expectantly or nodded repeatedly, waiting for him to continue. Back then, the great god Yi and the war god Rui both died after an unprecedented battle. The supreme divine bow left behind by the great god Yi was personally sealed by the ancient phoenix god. If we can find the supreme divine bow and the heaven and earth splitting arrow, we might be able to kill the demon god. However, the 9 heaven and earth splitting arrows have already been shot to 9 other spacetimes. I'm afraid it's impossible to find them. The rainbow-feathered Lion King said apologetically to the few of them, "Without a great cultivation that can travel through spacetime, it's impossible to find the 9 heaven and earth splitting arrows. If the divine arrows can't be combined with the divine bow, they won't be able to unleash their formidable power. I'm just speaking thoughtlessly, don't take it seriously." Wu Lixue, Pheasant, and Hong Tailong's gazes all turned to Yu Qianqiu. The three of them knew that this guy just happened to have something that couldn't be found. Yu Qianqiu's face was indescribably pleasantly surprised. He quickly took out the divine arrow and said cheerfully, "Sorry, I just happened to have a heaven and earth splitting arrow in my hand." This time, it was the rainbow-feathered Lion King's turn to be surprised. With a flash of light, he turned into a tall and sturdy man. He reached out to grab the divine arrow in Yu Qianqiu's hand to verify its authenticity. In the end, he found that it was unimaginably heavy. He had to spend a lot of cultivation to pick it up. There was no need to verify its authenticity. He cried out in surprise, "Is this really the heaven and earth splitting arrow? How did it fall into your hands? What's real can't be fake, and what's fake can't be real." Yu Qianqiu reached out to grab the divine arrow back. His eyes lit up, and he said, "Lion King. From what you said just now, the supreme godly bow was personally sealed by the ancient phoenix god, and you're the descendant of the phoenix temple's guardian god." After everyone stepped on the platform, the rainbow-feathered Lion King bowed slightly to the pheasant on Wu Lixue's shoulder. The pheasant immediately flapped its wings and flew up, making loud clanging sounds towards the empty sky. With the phoenix's cry, all the flying birds in the surroundings landed on the ground and bowed, as if they were on a pilgrimage. Wherever the pheasant sound waves reached, transparent ripples would appear in the void, and an image gradually appeared in the sea of clouds. A grand palace wrapped in a golden transparent ball of light appeared in the sky. The entire palace was made of pure white jade, and on the surface of the ball of light, there were many golden phoenixes dancing in the air. It was so beautiful that it was hard to look at them. Suddenly, a jade staircase appeared, connecting the palace in the air and the platform under everyone's feet. The few people who came here for the first time found it hard to believe. They clearly saw many flying birds circling around the palace, but they didn't see anything that could stop them from flying. They didn't expect the palace to be hidden in the air. This was obviously not an illusion, and they couldn't help but feel amazed. The rainbow-feathered Lion King continued to step on the staircase, leading the way. The few people also followed behind him. The staircase under their feet was real, and it was indeed not an illusion. When they reached the top of the staircase, they could already see the vast square of the temple. It was pure white, solemn and sacred, and there were 2 huge jade phoenixes on the left and right, looking down at everyone on the staircase. However, everyone was blocked by a golden transparent light screen, and they couldn't take another step forward. The rainbow-feathered Lion King walked to the side and made way for Wu Lishue to enter. Wu Lishue was at a loss and didn't know what to do. The pheasant on her shoulder giggled and said, "Sister Shuai, whether we can enter the temple or not depends on you. Quickly put on your phoenix cloud robe and bring us in." Wu Lishue looked back at Yu Qianqiu and smiled bitterly. "Phoenix cloud robe? I don't know how to put it on." Yu Qianqiu frowned. He knew that Wu Lishue did have a phoenix cloud robe in her body, but it seemed like Wu Lishue didn't know how to use it. He walked forward and tried to touch the golden transparent light screen. He found that there was a strong resistance, but there was no danger. He immediately took a few steps back and smiled at Wu Lishue. "It's okay, you can try and see if you can enter. If you really can't, then forget it." "Okay." Wu Lishue nodded obediently and walked forward. She bit her lips and reached out to touch the golden light screen. The moment her finger touched the light screen, Wu Lishue's body let out a slight buzzing noise. Abruptly, his body glowed with a splendid light, then shrunk. Next, a dreamy, nebula-like, 7-colored cloak covered Wu Lishue's body. An ancient sense of power was released from Wu Lishue's body along with that pair of faintly discernible starry wings. Chapter 1234. The misty 7-colored nebula was gorgeous and enchanting. Specks of light flickered as they swayed. Her dress fluttered in the wind as if it could fly away at any time. The ancient aura was like that of an eternal imperial family. Wu Lishue, who was wearing the phoenix cloud robe, was so noble that people could only look up to her. They didn't dare to have any thoughts of sullying her. Hong Tailong's eyes lit up as he looked at the fluttering nebula dress beside him. He reached out to grab it, wanting to feel what it felt like. However, he discovered that there was nothing there. He couldn't grab it at all. He rubbed his chin and clicked his tongue as he said, "So this is the phoenix cloud robe. It is rumored to be the robe of the ancient phoenix god. I didn't expect that it would fall into the hands of this simple-minded girl." The rainbow-feathered Lion King's expression turned solemn. He looked at Wu Lishue with a respectful and pious gaze. At this moment, the golden phoenix silhouettes that were fluttering all over the transparent golden light barrier suddenly gathered together. Wu Lishue was so frightened that she hurriedly withdrew her hand. Thousands of golden phoenix silhouettes gathered together. They circled around with their heads and tails intertwined. It was extremely beautiful. A whirlpool began to appear on the light barrier. It gradually expanded until a large door leading to the divine temple opened on the steps. "The divine temple is open. Sister Shuai, quickly come in." The pheasant flapped its wings and flew in first. It excitedly called out to the people outside. Wu Lishue, who was shrouded in the rainbow cloud robe, timidly walked in. The others had just followed her in when the thousands of golden phoenixes that had gathered and circled around the light barrier immediately dispersed. They continued to fly aimlessly on the light barrier. The large door of the light barrier closed and disappeared. Everyone followed behind the fluttering Wu Lishue. As they walked on the quiet and spacious white jade plaza, they could feel the ancient and sacred aura that seeped into their hearts. It was unknown how many years this place had existed for. The pheasant wasn't as sentimental as the others. It flapped its wings and excitedly flew into the tall palace door. When they passed by the door of the palace, they couldn't help but raise their heads to look at the words Phoenix Palace written on the high lintel. Inside the gate, the pheasants' excited cries could be heard continuously, urging everyone to come in and take a look. They reckoned that there was no danger, so they all walked in. The huge interior of the palace made everyone feel like tiny ants. The jade pillars surrounding them were at least dozens of feet in diameter and hundreds of feet in height. They were completely integrated and there were no marks on them. They were actually polished from a single piece of jade. There were no less than 100 jade pillars like this, and no one knew where they came from. The vast and spacious palace was completely empty. Apart from the jade pillars standing at the top, there was almost nothing else to be seen. On the high platform in the middle of the palace, there was a huge jade phoenix sculpture. Its wings were folded together to form a jade couch. On top of the jade couch was the chest area of the jade phoenix sculpture. There was a large metal wheel embedded in it. Round after round, it was the only metal object in the entire jade palace. It was very eye-catching. While everyone was still observing the surroundings, the pheasant was clearly attracted by the metal wheel. It flew in front of the jade couch and pondered for a long time. Suddenly, it shouted, "Sister Schwaer, quickly come and take a look." "What is this thing?" Wu Li Shue, who was wearing a rainbow-colored nebula dress, floated over. She stood on the jade couch and stared at the metal wheel with the pheasant. The rainbow-feathered Lion King walked over with a pious expression. It stood at the bottom of the jade couch with its hands clasped behind its back. "Apart from being huge, I don't see anything special about this so-called Phoenix Temple." Yu Qianqiu looked left and right. He patted Hong Tailong's shoulder and said, "Hong Tailong, you go to the right, I'll go to the left. Let's take a good look and see if we can find anything related to the divine bow." "Yes." Hong Tailong nodded. He also had the same intention. If he didn't take a good look at this place, he would be letting himself down. Both of them went to the left and right sides of the main hall. They circled around every huge jade pillar and looked around, hoping to find some clues. Not long after, the clatter-clatter sound of a spring suddenly came from inside the main hall. The pheasant's cheerful laughter followed, "So this plate can be turned. Sister Schwaer, come and give it a try." Yu Qianqiu stuck his head out from behind a jade pillar. He saw Wu Li Shue and the pheasant, who were standing on the jade couch, spinning the metal wheel that was pieced together. Both of them were having a great time. Suddenly, both the pheasant and Wu Li Shue cried out in surprise. They flashed to the bottom of the jade couch and looked at the metal wheel that was spinning continuously. Yu Qianqiu and Hong Tailong didn't know what was going on. They also flashed back. They saw that the huge wheel that was made up of more than 10 metal rings on the jade couch was spinning on its own. Some were spinning clockwise, some were spinning counterclockwise. The more it spun, the faster it spun. This was clearly not normal. What they didn't know was that the golden transparent light barrier that enveloped the divine temple was rapidly shrinking. It quickly retracted into the divine temple. "Did you guys touch some kind of restriction?" Yu Qianqiu asked cautiously. The two of them attacked the collapsed roof at the same time. With a boom, a huge hole was created. The two of them passed through the hole and floated in the air. They saw that the Jade Palace had already crashed into the mountain range below and was smashed into pieces. The Divine Phoenix Temple was destroyed just like that. The two of them stayed in the air for a long time. Suddenly, Yu Qianqiu raised both of his arms and roared angrily at the sky, "Who can tell me what is going on?" "Shua-er. How could this be?" Hong Tailong also shook his head. He flew down and rummaged through the shattered Jade Palace. In the end, he carried the huge metal wheel and flew back up. He placed it on the mountain peak with the Phoenix Stage inscription. He rubbed his chin and examined it carefully. In the end, he squatted down and started spinning the metal in circles, as if he was trying to figure out what was going on. After venting his anger in the air for a while, Yu Qianqiu powerlessly landed on the mountain peak. He sat on the ground in a daze and didn't say a word. After a long time, he suddenly jumped up and shouted, "Hong Tai Long! Come, let's go to the Netherworld Divine Palace. Open the passage to the God Realm, and we'll go there." Are you kidding me? We haven't completed our mission yet. How are we going to explain this to old ancestor Coiling Dragon when we return to the God Realm? Hong Tai Long rolled his eyes at him. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He had a good time fooling Hong Tai Long, but now he realized that he had shot himself in the foot. He clenched his teeth and said, "We can't care so much. Let's save Shui first." Hong Tai Long stood up, walked over, patted his shoulder, and consoled him, "Don't worry. The ancient phoenix god is famous for being kind. Based on the situation just now, Shui will only benefit from going to the God Realm. Taking 10,000 steps back, even if the ancient phoenix god has some bad intentions, do you think you can save that girl Shui from the ancient phoenix god with your current abilities? Even a resurrected wind god can scare you into fleeing, let alone the ancient phoenix god." Yu Qianqiu was silent. He knew that what Hong Tai Long said was right, but he still couldn't put his mind at ease when Wu Lishue's fate was unknown. Since it has already happened, there's no point in being anxious. "Come, take a look at this." Hong Tai Long grabbed his arm and dragged him to the side of the metal wheel. He pointed at it and said, "As long as you find the Supreme Divine Bow, you will have something to rely on to save Wu Lishue or to deal with the demonic god. I suspect that there might be something strange about this wheel. Otherwise, there's no way the ancient phoenix god would casually leave a treasure that even your divine arrows can't break. The clue to finding the Supreme Divine Bow might be on it. Kid, your brain is better than mine. Calm down and take a good look. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.